you wrote an article that I am really excited to pick your brain on and talk through. Your article is called When Sex Hurts, Part One, Shame. And so I'm really curious to start off, who did you write this article to?
Yeah, initially I was thinking about, I've had so many clients actually that have had pain during intercourse that has really impacted their sexual relationship with their spouse.
Is this
And
mainly women?
mainly women, I would say. Actually, all of it has been women, but that pain physically during sex that is causes so many other challenges, right? Because they're experiencing pain, which then makes their spouse feel like they, can't really enjoy sex with them, which then makes sex really hard to have with their spouse, which then makes them feel really guilty because they don't want to be, preventing their spouse or even themselves from not enjoying something that God designed.
Right, it's
And
a bit of a
so,
domino effect.
yeah, it does. It has a whole domino effect. So that painful intercourse then just turns into like painful marriage sometimes. And I think I was writing to both the husband and the wife because I think there's a lot of shame around this topic because not many people talk about it or know how to talk about it. So,
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I've been married now for a year, and I have a lot of friends who, have also been newly married or married for, only a couple of years. And I remember, after getting married, there is that weird period of, adjusting to the new way of things. And I remember, having conversations with my friends, like no one talks about some of this stuff. Like there are so many things that nobody talked about, nobody told me about, that domino effect where if one time like something hurts, it can affect like the whole rest of the week. And,
yeah.
nobody talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really prevalent. And I think especially like if that goes unaddressed for a certain amount of time and couples like play through the pain is what we call it, they continue to have sex through the pain, then oftentimes what ends up happening is there's an aversion to sex because sex is associated with pain, right, in the brain, which then makes them want to avoid having sex. So yeah, it's just kind of like you said, it has a domino effect, and then that then has a bigger effect on the marriage as a whole. And so I think it's so important for us to like educate people on what is, because there is a normal kind of pain that you'll experience from having sex for the first time, but there's a persistent pain that occurs afterwards that's probably not as it is common but not as normal maybe, that needs help, that needs to be talked about, that needs to be processed, that I think is important for us to address. So
Yeah, how common would you say that the sexual pain is, in relationships?
yeah, that's a great question. I would say like research says that there's like between 8 to 21% of women experience pain during sex. And so I think that's kind of a large number when you think about that. That's at least 20% of women are experiencing that during sex. And so, yeah, I would say it's anywhere between that, and usually that then leads to avoidance of intercourse altogether. So,
Right. Yeah, I would think it would also maybe lead to some bitterness, like if it hurts, if it's painful and you, as you said, like play through the pain, I would think that it might maybe lead to some bitterness, toward the other person, or like, just tension in that.
yeah, I think what I found is that a lot of these couples that are coming in to see me have waited to have sex until they got married. Like, so they were really excited for their first night, really excited to be able to enjoy this sexual relationship with their spouse. And then, time goes on in their honeymoon where it's like still hurting, still hurting, still hurting. And then into their first month of marriage, like it's still hurting, still hurting. And I think what I've found a lot of couples experience is that there's a lot of bitterness, sometimes even towards God. Like, God, like I waited, like I
Right.
waited all the time. I tried to do it your way. Yeah. And like, why am I now going through this? Like, it feels unfair. And then I think too, you're right, Tori, like there can be an element of bitterness that can be developed through the relationship, both towards the husband or the wife, right? If the wife's feeling like the husband's wanting them to continue having sex even though they're in pain, obviously that can create bitterness. But then on the flip side, the husband, if they abstain from having sex with their spouse because there's pain, then they're feeling like, gosh, I waited all this time and I can't even have sex with my wife, that can cause feelings towards their wife. So lots of different emotions that can come up there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just think like what you were talking about, just those expectations that you put on your wedding night, on all of the sexual encounters that come, after you get married, if you waited, and you think about that. And I think it's very easy to find yourself disappointed because a lot of times like things don't feel or look the way that we expected them to, especially that kind of situation. I think a majority of people that I know have experienced sexual pain and have experienced that kind of, I guess, wrestling with what was it like, this doesn't feel like it's supposed to be this way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think because there isn't a whole lot of conversation about it, shame really comes in because it's like, am I the only one that's going through this? Like, why didn't anybody tell me this? When I see things in the movies or I hear people talking about it, it seems really easy, or like it should be just natural for us to figure this out. And so I think, again, shame piles on because I should know this. This should be natural, and it's not. It's painful, and it's not easy like everything says it should be.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned shame in your article, just kind of how it is the kind of deepest emotion associated with sexual pain that you see in your session. So why do you think that is? I mean, of course, you mentioned expectations and maybe some disappointments, but why do you think that shame is such a prevalent emotion in these types of situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly think shame basically tells us that there's something wrong with us, right? Um, it makes us feel like we're defective or broken. And I think specifically for women who experience sexual pain, because they feel like they've done everything they can, or they've tried to fix it the way all their friends have, and it's still not working. I think it just leaves them feeling like broken, like what's wrong with me? Like why am I the one that is struggling with this? Like there must be something inherently like bad about me or defective. And so because there is this nature of like I can't overcome this or I don't know how to fix this, it then kind of tends to not help, make people spiral, honestly, into that place of there must be something wrong with me. I'm just broken. And that shame then really sets in. And sometimes couples can even identify with that as a couple, like the identity as a couple, like what's wrong with us? Like, why can't we figure this out? All of our friends have figured it out. Why can't we figure it out? And again, there's something broken about us, which then can put a lot of heaviness and grief, right? As well can set in on the relationship. Like, this isn't what we thought it was going to be. So,
Yeah, can you kind of expand on shame being the second most powerful, feeling after love? You say that in your article, and I'd love it if you could just kind of expand on that.
yeah, Brene Brown, who is like an avid researcher on shame, she actually talks about this. So if anybody ever wanted to listen to any of her TED Talks, I definitely encourage you to, because she researches shame. And she actually talks about this in a lot of what she shares in her research. Just that shame is the second most powerful emotion. And it actually is one of I think it is the driving emotion for addiction. And basically what shame does is it triggers us, it makes us feel like a failure, and then leads us into feeling like we are defective or flawed, and then motivates us to want to like hide, right? Shame makes us want to hide. I even think about even the garden, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, they were ashamed of being naked. And I love God's heart because he's like looking for them. He's like searching for them in the garden, even though they had done something to disobey him.
Yeah,
But
he's like, I still want you.
yeah, he's like, I still wanted them instantly. Like he was looking for them, right? But they still wanted to hide. And how that's kind of what shame does to us. It like makes us want to shut down, avoid feeling that feeling because it is really powerful, which then leads us to maybe doing some things that we wouldn't normally do, like drugs, like alcohol, maybe even getting into some sexual type of deviant behavior that we wouldn't normally act out in, because we don't want to feel that feeling of shame, which is really intense. and powerful. So you'll see that most of the time with any type of addiction, that shame is usually the driving feeling or factor behind it.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned multiple antidotes for shame, specifically around, sexual pain. One of the ones that you mentioned is vulnerability with others, with your partner and with also yourself. What does it look like, Melissa, to be vulnerable with yourself?
Such a good question. I feel like this is a really hard thing to do because we get anxiety sometimes when we think about feeling what we feel, right? It's overwhelming sometimes to think about feeling things that are unpleasant or scary. Our brain just kind of shuts down. And so I would say that one of the things that I think is really important is just to notice your body. To notice what's going on in your body just on a regular basis, specifically about this topic. Like when you think about, having sex with your spouse, or when it's brought up, maybe your spouse initiates having sex, or vice versa. The person who maybe doesn't have the pain and your spouse initiates sex, like to start just getting in touch with like, okay, what happens in my body when I think about this? And I say that just because I think our bodies are great tellers of what's going on in our emotions, right? We usually have a visceral response to what we're feeling in our body. And so we can easily get in touch with how we're feeling if we can pay attention to our body. So if we notice like, oh, I'm feeling really tight in my chest, or oh, I'm feeling really heavy right now, or my stomach is in knots. The question then I would encourage you to ask yourself is, man, what would that be saying about what I'm feeling right now? If that sensation could speak, what would it say? And I think just us starting to track our bodies and also pay attention to what we might be feeling attached to our body will help us get just more in touch with what we're feeling and be vulnerable, even just with ourselves. And I do think that's very scary. And I think if you struggle to do that on your own, it's okay to get help for that. If you need to seek out help, to seek a therapist to help you to figure out and learn how to do that, then I think that would be productive and beneficial. So,
Right, right. So then the other side of it of being vulnerable with others, how do you get past, practically that shame piece, that almost is like a wall between like you and, the others that you're trying to be vulnerable with? How do you get past that shame wall?
It's a great question. Well, I do think being vulnerable with yourself is like key first, right? Because it's going to be really hard for us to share what we feel if we don't even know what we're feeling. So I think it's helpful to try to get in touch with ourselves first. And then I think the first person I would encourage us to be open and honest with, if you feel like safe enough to do this, would be with your spouse. To be able to say, hey, honey, like this has been really hard. I am really feeling a lot of pain. This is what I'm feeling, every time we experience this. So there's, I think, talking to your spouse and asking. I think that's one of the things I've encouraged people to do is like, ask, like, hey, could I share something with you that's going to be hard for me to share? Sometimes like asking that question gives us the space we need to be able to see if somebody's open to hearing us,
It's like
and
getting permission a little bit, like to be yourself and to share your heart. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like I'm asking permission. I'm checking in with you. Like, hey, are you in a good space to hear me right now?
Yeah, like almost feeling validated before you start.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it sometimes that helps like alleviate the shame because you're being vulnerable just about needing to talk at first.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability of like, okay, I need to talk, and they received that. Like, okay, maybe I can share more of my heart. And so to try to do that with your spouse, and then just to consider others in your life that may respond to that in a way that feels safe to you. I think we usually get a good sense of those around us if we really think about that. Like, who in the past has responded well to me when I shared something with them that was hard? And to really consider maybe those one or two people in your life that you could share this with. And then again, to invite them to talk to you about it, to ask them, hey, is it okay if I bring something up to you today that has been hard for me? And then to lead with just sharing, maybe even if you have to write it out on paper because you're too scared to say it. And you read from the paper, whatever it is that's going to help you. But sometimes that exposure of just sharing, what is in secret is really freeing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, practical advice. I mean, I think that can apply to a lot of different things, not just, struggling with shame with sexual pain. I think just the idea of asking, before you start talking, I think it just opens the door kind of for you to feel comfortable stepping in and things like that. So I think that that is just great advice, and writing things down if you need to. And I love that. And, my last couple questions, would be, what would you, as a counselor who specializes in sex therapy and, marriages, what would you say to both the wife who's struggling with sexual pain as well as the husband?
Oh, yeah, oh, so much. I think the first thing I would say is just that I feel with you. I obviously don't know everybody who's experiencing this right now, but just from what I've walked through with some of my wives, I think just that I feel with you. Like I feel just the grief that you might be feeling about the loss, around how difficult this must be for you. I think the other thing I would share is just that I feel for you around the shame piece, if there is shame there, that it would make sense that this would feel, scary or shameful, like that you would feel broken, that you couldn't do something that, for whatever reason in the world, they make it seem like it looks so easy. And then I think I would also encourage you that it is not that easy, that so many couples struggle with this, and that so many women struggle with pain, and that it is actually a lot more normal than you think it might be. And that there is a way to get help. Like there really is. The treatment for sexual pain, it is usually and is most normally and commonly very treatable. If you came in to do sex therapy with a clinician that really understood how to do sex therapy, you just need direction from somebody who knows how to help you. And so that would be the thing I would say to the wife, just that I feel for her, and that I understand maybe that pain that she's experiencing, both physically and emotionally, and that there is hope, like that there is places where they can get help, and that you can overcome that. And I think for the husband, I think the same thing. Like I just feel for you as well. Like I think most of the husbands I've seen come in are just feeling really sad because they love their wives and they care about them, and they want to be with their wives because they love them, and they want to experience sex with them because they're attracted to their wives and they want to engage sex with them. But just that I understand like how hard that must be to be attracted to your wife and want to be sexual with her, want to experience her. And then on the flip side, just feeling really guilty that you might feel that way because you know that that desire in itself might cause her pain if you engage it. So just that I feel for you about that, and that I would encourage you to be patient and not to play through the pain with her, but to really seek help, and encourage her to seek help, so that you guys can overcome that together versus trying to deal with it in your own way. I think one of the things I see a lot of men struggle with is then kind of avoiding sex and acting out, maybe using pornography or masturbation of some sort, which I think then can just add on to the pain in the marriage. And so I just would encourage you to be urgent about seeking help if this is an area where it's been a struggle. So
Yeah, I think a key thing that you mentioned just now was that there's hope, that you're not too far gone, whether you've been, struggling for the first month of being married or whether you've been struggling for years, there is hope. And of course, like sex was designed by God, and he loves it and he wants it to be, thriving in marriage. And I totally hear you and just love your heart around this. And yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, girl. It was totally designed by God, and he does want us to enjoy it. And I love that you just highlighted that hope piece, because I do think there's a lot of hope for couples. I've walked through it with people. I've seen them get to the other side of that. And it's not always a fast process. Sometimes it's slower. Sometimes it's fast. Depends on where people are at. But I do think there's a lot of hope that things can be different.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I just think that that article is really important. And I mean, I almost want to like just send it to a bunch of my, friends who are kind of newlyweds and in this season. And I think it's really, really good that you're talking about it and that you're, being somebody who can just like come alongside people. So love that. And I appreciate you writing it and sharing.